He was 10 years old the night he understood what hunger really meant. Not the kind you feel before dinner, the kind that makes your stomach twist while you pretend you are not hungry so your mother can eat instead. Outside their small apartment in northern Canada, snow pressed against the thin window like a silent witness. Inside, the heater barely worked. His mother stitched torn clothes under a dim lamp, her fingers shaking from exhaustion. He watched her and made a promise no child should ever have to make. One day, I will change this. He did not know how, he did not know when, but in that freezing room, something powerful was born: belief. While other kids dreamed of toys, he dreamed of warmth, stability, and dignity. That night, poverty did not break him. It built him. And what he would do with that quiet promise would shock everyone who ever doubted him. By the age of 14, childhood was already behind him. While classmates talked about video games and weekend trips, he stacked shelves at a local grocery store after school. He walked home in heavy snow because bus fare was a luxury. Every dollar he earned went straight to bills. Sometimes he felt embarrassed wearing the same faded jacket year after year, but embarrassment slowly turned into fuel. He studied people carefully. How they spoke, how they carried themselves, how managers made decisions. He realized something important. Wealth was not magic. It was habits. Discipline. Choices repeated every day. He began waking up at 5 a.m., reading borrowed books before school. No one told him to, no one forced him. He simply refused to stay small, and soon life would test just how serious he truly was. At 17, he made a decision that would change everything. University felt impossible. Tuition was beyond reach, so he chose the only option available: the factory. The building was massive, loud and unforgiving. Metal clanged, machines roared, the air smelled like oil and burnt steel. On his first day, older workers looked at him with tired eyes, as if warning him not to dream too big. The shifts were long, sometimes 12 hours. His hands blistered, his back ached. But every time exhaustion whispered, "This is your life now," he whispered back, "No, this is just the beginning." During lunch breaks, while others complained, he observed the supervisors. He asked questions. He volunteered for extra tasks. He wasn't just working for a paycheck, he was studying the system. And soon, that mindset would separate him from everyone else on the factory floor. Winter in Canada is not kind to factory workers. He would leave home before sunrise, darkness wrapping around the city like a heavy blanket. By the time he returned, it was dark again. Days blurred together. Paychecks disappeared into rent, groceries, and heating bills. Some nights, doubt crept in. Maybe this is enough, his mind would say. Maybe stability is success. But every time he looked at his mother's tired hands, he remembered that promise from years ago. He started using his evenings differently. Instead of watching television, he enrolled in free online business courses. He studied leadership, money management, and communication. Slowly, his thinking changed. He stopped seeing himself as a worker and started seeing himself as a future owner. The factory was no longer a cage, it was a classroom, and what he was learning would soon open a door no one saw coming. By 21, exhaustion had become normal. His body worked in the factory, but his mind was building something bigger. He started saving aggressively, skipping small pleasures, avoiding unnecessary spending, tracking every dollar. Co-workers laughed when he refused weekend parties. "You're young. Enjoy life," they said. But he understood something they didn't: temporary comfort can steal permanent success. During breaks, he listened to podcasts about Canadian entrepreneurs. At night, he studied case studies of small manufacturing businesses. He noticed inefficiencies inside his own factory: wasted materials, outdated processes, poor communication. Instead of complaining, he took notes. Quietly, he began drafting ideas in a worn notebook. He wasn't just dreaming anymore, he was preparing. And preparation, even when invisible, builds unstoppable momentum. Soon, an opportunity would appear, and he would be ready when others hesitated. The opportunity came disguised as a problem. The factory announced layoffs. Orders were slowing. Fear spread quickly across the floor. Many workers panicked. Some blamed management. Others began searching for new jobs immediately. He felt fear too, but he also saw something else. Instability creates gaps. Gaps create chances. He approached a retiring supervisor and asked questions others were too afraid to ask. Why were costs rising? Where were clients going? What did the companies struggle with most? Those conversations changed everything. He realized smaller companies in nearby cities needed reliable suppliers. The big factory was too slow to adapt. That night, staring at his notebook, he saw the outline of a future business. It was risky. It was uncertain. But for the first time, he wasn't thinking about surviving. He was thinking about building. And the next step would demand more courage than he had ever shown before. At 23, he made the boldest decision of his life. He left the factory. No rich family, no investors, just savings from years of discipline and a belief stronger than fear. His mother worried. Friends questioned him. "Stable job, car business? Are you crazy?" they asked. Maybe he was. Because courage often looks like madness to people who fear risk. He rented a tiny garage space on the edge of town. The roof leaked when it rained. The heater barely worked, but to him it felt like possibility. He bought second-hand tools and began offering small manufacturing services to local businesses. The first weeks were silent. No calls, no clients. Doubt screamed louder than ever. But he showed up every single day, unlocking that garage before sunrise. Because success is not built on excitement. It is built on consistency. And soon, one phone call would change everything. The first client almost didn't happen. A small construction company needed custom metal brackets quickly. Bigger suppliers had delayed them. He promised delivery in half the time, even though he wasn't sure how he would manage it. For 3 days, he barely slept. He worked through the night, hands shaking from exhaustion, double-checking every measurement. Failure was not an option. When he delivered the order personally, the client inspected the pieces carefully. Silence felt endless. Then the man nodded and said, "Good work." That simple sentence carried more weight than any paycheck he had ever received. Payment was modest, but confidence skyrocketed. Word spread slowly. One client became 2, 2 became 5. He reinvested every dollar back into equipment. Growth was slow, fragile, and uncertain, but it was real. And with growth came a new challenge he wasn't fully prepared for. Growth tested him in ways poverty never had. Orders increased, but so did pressure. Machines broke down, deliveries were delayed. One major client threatened to cancel a contract after a small mistake. For a moment, the old fear returned, the fear of losing everything. He could have blamed stress. He could have blamed bad luck. Instead, he took responsibility. He called the client personally, admitted the mistake, and fixed it at his own cost. That decision hurt financially, but it built something far more valuable: trust. He realized business wasn't just about profit. It was about reputation. Slowly, his name began to carry weight in local industry circles. People respected his honesty and relentless work ethic. The boy who once walked home in snow now drove across cities negotiating contracts. But just as momentum was building, an economic downturn would threaten to shut his doors for good. When the economy slowed, contracts disappeared almost overnight. Phones stopped ringing. Bills did not. Payroll became heavy on his shoulders. For the first time, he had employees depending on him, men and women with families of their own. The weight of leadership pressed harder than any factory shift he had ever worked. One sleepless night, staring at financial reports, he faced a painful choice: downsize or innovate. Instead of shrinking, he pivoted. He researched new industries that were still growing in Canada: renewable energy, custom fabrication for infrastructure, specialized components others ignored. He retrained his team, invested in new skills, and knocked on doors personally. Rejection followed rejection. But persistence eventually cracked resistance. A breakthrough contract arrived, smaller than he hoped, but enough to survive. And survival in hard seasons is the foundation of dominance in the next. That small breakthrough contract became the turning point. It was a renewable energy company looking for precise metal components for wind installations in rural Canada. Larger suppliers ignored the job because margins were thin. He saw opportunity where others saw inconvenience. He gathered his team and said, "We don't compete on size, we compete on precision and reliability." They worked relentlessly, improving systems, tightening quality control, delivering ahead of schedule. When the client inspected the final batch, they were impressed not just by the product, but by the professionalism. A second contract followed, then a longer-term agreement. For the first time, revenue stabilized. He reinvested again, better machinery, safety upgrades, skilled hires. Slowly, his small garage operation transformed into a legitimate company. But success brings new eyes, and not all of them are friendly. Competition was watching now, and they were not pleased. Competitors tried to undercut him. Some spread rumors that his company was too small to handle large-scale contracts. A supplier suddenly raised prices without warning. Pressure returned, sharper than before. But he had evolved. The boy who once reacted with fear now responded with strategy. He diversified suppliers. He strengthened relationships directly with clients. He focused on something competitors ignored: culture. He treated his employees like partners, not expenses. He shared goals transparently. When tough months came, they stood together instead of turning against him. That loyalty became his hidden advantage. While competitors chased quick profits, he built long-term trust. Slowly, those same companies that doubted him began losing contracts. Clients preferred reliability over flashy promises. His brand was no longer just a small name in the market, it was becoming respected. And with respect came a bold opportunity that would push him onto a much bigger stage. The bold opportunity came from a major infrastructure project expanding across Western Canada. The contract was larger than anything his company had handled before. Advisors warned him, this could stretch you too thin. Banks hesitated to extend credit. The risk was enormous. But so was the potential. He spent nights reviewing projections, calculating worst-case scenarios, preparing backup plans. This wasn't blind ambition, it was disciplined courage. Finally, he signed the contract. The next months were intense. Production lines ran at full capacity. Logistics had to be flawless. He personally visited sites, inspected deliveries, and solved problems before they escalated. The pressure was relentless, but he had trained for this moment through years of struggle. When the final milestone was completed successfully, the results were undeniable. Revenue doubled. Industry recognition followed. The factory worker was now a serious competitor in national markets. But success at this level demanded something deeper, a shift from operator to visionary. Growth forced him to confront a new truth. Working harder was no longer enough. He had built the company with sweat and sacrifice, but now it needed structure, leadership layers, and vision beyond daily operations. He began hiring experienced managers, people who once would never have considered working for a former factory laborer. At first, delegating felt uncomfortable. Control had been his security, but true leadership meant trusting others. He shifted his focus from machines to strategy, long-term contracts, expansion into other provinces, smarter technology investments. The company moved into a larger facility. Systems improved. Efficiency increased. For the first time, he wasn't just building income, he was building an institution. And institutions, when built correctly, outlive the struggles that created them. But with expansion came exposure, and exposure always attracts new challenges. Expansion into new provinces tested logistics, leadership, and patience. Regulations differed, client expectations shifted, travel became constant, airports replaced weekends at home. There were moments he questioned whether the sacrifice was worth it. But every time fatigue crept in, he remembered the freezing apartment from his childhood. That memory kept him grounded. He built regional teams, empowered local leaders, and created training programs to maintain quality standards. Slowly, branches began operating independently, yet aligned with his core values: integrity, precision, and discipline. Revenue streams diversified, stability strengthened. What began in a leaking garage was now a respected Canadian enterprise, yet success did not change his humility. And that humility would soon define the kind of rich he truly became. By his early 40s, financial success was undeniable. The company's valuation crossed numbers he once couldn't even pronounce. He purchased a home for his mother. Warm, bright, secure. The day he handed her the keys, neither of them spoke much. Words were unnecessary. The promise made in that cold apartment had been fulfilled. But wealth changed him in an unexpected way. It made him more aware of responsibility. He began investing in apprenticeship programs for young workers who reminded him of himself. He visited technical schools, spoke about discipline and resilience. Because real richness is not measured only in bank accounts, it is measured in impact. And his impact was just beginning to expand beyond business. He established scholarships for skilled trade students across Canada. He funded small startup grants for workers with innovative ideas. Reporters began calling him the factory worker who became rich. But he rejected the title quietly. In interviews, he always emphasized process over luck. "I was not special," he would say. "I was consistent." Behind the public recognition was the same disciplined routine: early mornings, strategic planning, constant learning. Success had not removed struggle, it had simply changed its scale. The pressure of protecting a growing enterprise was enormous, yet he remained grounded because he never forgot where he started, and that memory kept his ambition sharp and his ego small. There were still challenges: market shifts, political regulations, global supply chain disruptions. But unlike the young worker who once feared layoffs, he now faced uncertainty with preparation. Diversified investments, strong leadership teams, and disciplined financial management shielded the company. Instead of reacting emotionally, he responded strategically. He had learned that fear loses power when confronted with knowledge and planning. Each crisis strengthened the foundation rather than shaking it. The company not only survived volatility, it expanded during it. And as others struggled, his organization became a symbol of resilience in the industry. But the most powerful transformation was not financial. It was internal. One evening, standing alone in his high-rise office overlooking the Canadian skyline, he reflected on the journey. From hunger to stability, from factory shifts to executive decisions, from survival to significance. Wealth had given him comfort, but discipline had given him identity. Belief had carried him when evidence was absent. Hard work had built bridges where fear once stood. He understood now that the real victory was not the money, it was the mindset. The boy who once whispered promises in the cold had become a man who kept them. And if his story proved anything, it was this: circumstances can limit your start, but they never define your finish. So if you are watching this from a small apartment, from a factory floor, from a place where money feels far away, remember this story. Success is not built in comfort. It is forged in cold mornings, in rejection, in discipline when nobody is watching. He was not handed opportunity, he created it. He was not saved by luck, he was shaped by consistency. The journey from factory worker to wealthy CEO was not a straight line. It was sacrifice, learning, risk, and belief repeated daily for decades. And if a boy from a freezing Canadian apartment can rise through focus and resilience, then your current struggle may simply be your foundation. The question is not whether success is possible. The question is whether you are willing to endure long enough to earn it.